What's the worst fact bomb you've heard?
Vaccines are safe. And this one's bad for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, just telling and pushing relies thoroughly on what we would call an appeal to authority. I know and you don't, and therefore I'm going to tell you that this is good. Secondly, specifically in that case of the vaccines are safe, I don't have to look very far to find one example where it wasn't safe for that person. And so you're shown to be wrong.
Mm.
And so anything that you were going to get out of sharing this message that you were trying to get across of saying vaccines are safe, first, you're lumping every vaccine into one thing. Second, you're using an absolute, which has actually been, demonstrably incorrect. Mm-hmm. And third, fourth, all of these extra layers, it's not effective. It doesn't work. It doesn't help increase our vaccine rate. It doesn't help increase or reduce the amount of disease in the community. What does reduce the amount of disease in community is listening to and understanding what the concerns are, recognizing that regardless of whether or not we think they're reasonable concerns, the concerns they have are real to them, and we need to think about them and consider them. An example from not too long ago was that there was this tendency in 2020, just as the idea that we might have a vaccine for COVID might come out. There was this murmuring within the science communication community around being afraid of the anti-vaxxers. And all of a sudden, those anti-vaxxers weren't behaving like anti-vaxxers. What's going on here? We had to stop and pedal back just a little bit to recognize they weren't anti-vaxxers who were concerned. They were people who we've been telling that science research and medical research takes 10 years to go through clinical trials, and then we've just done something in 10 months. We didn't do a good enough job of actually showing or demonstrating that we did all of our checks and balances. It's just that we spent the world's resource on this one problem for a moment rather than spending this much of a tiny bit of resource. So attacking them with the same messaging of vaccines are safe completely missed the point of what was actually the reason why there was some concern in the community from people who were normally very ready to get a vaccine for their child. We needed to actually start to pull the curtain away and show some of the process that was going behind and demonstrate the actual, the really, really intense, incredibly good work that was done to achieve what had never been achieved in the history of humanity. This kind of global effort on a single problem for a concerted about 9 months had never happened in this way before. And we had, at least in Australia, we had three very viable vaccines that came out and were a huge part of the Australian strategy of making sure that the hospital systems didn't fall over and that we didn't have this massive increase of the number of people dying from heart attack because they couldn't get help because the hospitals were full.
We made a vaccine promo, encouraging people to get vaccinated, and I think we did a good job with encouraging people by not shaming them, but really making them think about doing it for each other, and bringing us all back to the good things. It was actually called The Good Things.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, is that we need to, when we're being faced with these kind of challenges of you are communicating for some sort of purpose. There is a reason why you're doing a promo on vaccines, right? There is, you are communicating for the good of the community or for public health initiatives or what have you. That we need to be careful of just falling into the tried and ready tropes that already exist. a little dab of science communication research is that we now know if you put a picture at the top of your info sheet of a polar bear standing on all fours looking at the camera and there being lots of water around, said polar bear, it's not in the snow or whatever, but the ice caps are melting, polar bear image. Everyone knows this image that I'm talking about, the various versions that exists. If you put that image at the top of your social media post or if you put it on the top of your little banner, immediately, it doesn't matter what's actually written in the document, people have already decided whether or not they believe what's there or not. And so the people who are angry about the impact that action on climate change is having on their life immediately dismiss it. They can't listen to any of the facts. They can't listen to any of the arguments that you're putting forward inside whatever it is you're doing. The people who are who feel as though we should be doing a lot more about climate change instantly are like, yes. And this visceral reaction that we have to this image, which has become a trope connected to effectively a campaign, has made any time that you use that image completely pointless. We have similar kind of reactions in much of Australia to images of bushfire connected to climate change. This is not an issue in a lot of the rest of the world, but in Australia, this particular image is used connected to climate change. And again, you have that immediate turn off. I can't listen to you anymore. And this is the bit that I get really excited about, is that this is where we can start really pulling in the science of communication to be able to understand how we can then best get our message across, because we can actually do the research. We can actually check this, and we can then, if we are wanting to achieve something, we can go about doing it in a way that's going to be actually has a greater chance of success than trying something that we think or feel should be good, because we're already on this side of the camp and we know that we react well to the picture of the polar bear. So yeah, it's an interesting and fascinating field of scholarship. Yeah.
So for you, what came first, science or communications?
It was definitely science. I was always fascinated in the world. My mum tells a story of me learning words, and I had a shirt and I had shorts on classifying things, and so this would be my shat. And this was my nose. Well, that became nears and that became nise. I think this was always kind of innately in me, this idea of looking at the world and trying to pull it apart and understand it. And so definitely the fascination how in the patterns of nature and the way that this works, chemistry just clicked. What I loved about it was the more that I started to understand the complexity in the patterns, the more the rest of the patterns made sense. The thing that I was taught in grade 7 or grade 8, that didn't feel quite right with me because there were too many exceptions to the rule. Well, in grade 9 and grade 10, I was taught something that was a little bit more complete. And then that made all the stuff from earlier feel a lot more comfortable because I then understood better. And this was my experience as I kept on going through until I was in my PhD and I was learning things that people didn't know yet, where we are building on that knowledge. That was really satisfying for me. But the thing that was really that I felt was incredibly important, though, was it didn't matter what kind of impact I might have as a researcher, if I wasn't able to get that research out to wherever it might be it that I'm giving a talk at a conference, be it that I'm doing a media interview, whatever it might be, teaching in a lecture theatre. And I was really excited to focus specifically some energy in how I go about communicating the science that I did and test out communicating other people's science as well. There was this amazing program that was run in Canberra. It was the Questacon Science Circus, which it still exists. It's a different form today. But back when I did that, it was you were doing a master's program, being taught about the academic field of scholarship of science communication, understanding models of learning, understanding all of these the spaces where we are doing research into how people believe things and how people remember things and how people learn, and some of that research around how people react to certain images or things like this. But at the same time, was extremely practical on the ground. We were traveling all over Australia, delivering science shows to schools in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I think the longest trip that I did was we were in kind of a hub, and then I was driving 4 hours to a school with my show buddy, and then we did a 1 hour show, and then turned around and drove another 4 hours back. And this was like the extent of the whole experience. Fascinating experience, and I just kind of got like. I didn't leave research because I didn't like doing research anymore, but I saw the potential of what really, really sinking into what science communication could be. I saw the potential impact that I could have if I became expert in this space. Because there's like I had seen any scientist who's watched the news has got angry at some point and going, that's not how you say that, or you see some sort of material at the doctor's office or whatever it might be, and there's all of these words. There are all these words. There are all these words that don't mean what you think it should be meaning, and I think I found some fascination in actually spending some time studying that. And then it kind of got stuck, and I haven't stopped. Yeah.
How does it make you feel when the media takes research papers out of context and says, "Oh, this thing, cures cancer," when that's not what the research was about?
Yeah, I think this is. I have a massive amount of respect for the field of journalism. I have a massive amount of respect and admiration for the dedicated science journalists that we have, the few that we have in Australia. And by that I say the few who have got full-time gigs in Australia. There are plenty of science journalists in Australia, but they just don't have their beat job at the same paper or whatever. This doesn't. There's only a couple of them. I'm not infuriated with the media. In my view, they're not getting it wrong, with some key exceptions. But we're in an attention economy. Like, we're constantly striving to try and find the thing to get a hold of someone's attention for a little while. We want to cover science research and impact, but we haven't figured out how to cover it in the same way that we cover the footy. Right? We haven't found a way of being able to cover science in the way where we can say that match happened and that was a shocker, but they're going to come back next week and they're going to try again. Or that this doesn't mean that they're the premiers this year, that this is a step on the progress. We have, through a lot of people's experience of going through school, a lot of us have dismissed science as being something that we can even do. It's the hard thing. You start saying, I'm a mathematician. Oh, I never did math. Or I did chemistry. Oh, I sucked at chemistry in grade. Like, in the same way to the idea of the image of the polar bear, that people just turn off. Mm-hmm. And so it is a challenge. How do you then get someone to be interested in a step on the 10,000 step journey of solving a problem as big and as complex as cancer? Like, because it's not one problem, right? And we haven't even started to define what that problem is before we've run out of time in our 90-second snippet that it ends up on the nightly news. Does that mean that I'm okay with it and think it's good that the media are saying that they've got a cure for cancer and over-representing stuff? Definitely not. There's a much better way of doing that. There's a much better way of covering research that is a step towards. And I think that is the challenge of people who do the work that I have done a little bit of in that science PR space, where you're not immediately jumping down the bandwagon of saying science is great and has all the answers, because it doesn't. It's not the complete story. But you're finding the interesting and innovative ways of being able to capture attention and talk about the really, really fascinating stories, the journeys that we have gone on to achieve some sort of goal. And we are now better placed to face tomorrow. Like, why isn't that awesome and exciting? It can be. It doesn't have to be as simple as saying, oh, we solved cancer, because, yeah,